Happy Wealth Wednesday. Tessa, I'm so glad to have you here. Your journey in Google all the way into now real estate, both personally and beyond, is super inspirational. And I'm very excited to dive in with you. And I would love if you could kick us off with a little bit of your background and introduction.
My name is Tessa Schaaf Tarlow. I have been at Google for about 5 years now. I'm what's called an administrative business partner for a global digital marketing sales team. And I always get, what does that even mean? Which I totally understand. Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of executive support, operations, and project management. I've always been super passionate, not always, I would say in the past 3 years, actually. I've gotten really interested in the personal finance space for a variety of reasons and just realized how much I didn't know and I didn't like that feeling. So from at Google and now working with outside of Google, this organization called the Real Estate InvestHER, that's everything I do is geared towards financial freedom for women.
What was your first ever investment, if you can remember, and who or what got you started?
Mm-hmm. The most basic meat and potatoes Vanguard S&P 500 mutual fund. It was good. It was the first step. I distinctly remember, like, why is it called this weird thing? And why did, market stop and like all these money market funds and transfers and all the things, and feeling like this is a little more complicated than it needs to be. And it's exciting now. Like that, I think back in the day, and still at Vanguard, you have to maybe put down $1,000 or $3,000 to even get in the game. And that's just not true anymore, which is so exciting with all these robo advisors and Acorn Stash. I'm not what's the word, endorsing anything, but it's exciting that you can get started with $5. And I think this feeling that this is so scary, I don't understand, and the risk, well, if you can play around with $5, get your feet wet, understand how it all works, the language and all that stuff, that's very exciting for women and really anyone to be able to get comfortable and grow their wealth.
Absolutely. Do you remember who or why you invested in that? Like, was it somebody in your life who told you about it, or where did that come from?
My dad. He's the best. He's really always been. I'm very fortunate that he's always wanted my sister and I to understand this stuff. He's like, I don't want you ever to be dependent upon a partner, I want you to be financially independent, all those things, and understand what's going on. And I think it just took me way too long to be like, okay, Dad, to really absorbing it and completely agreeing and diving in head first. And so it's definitely my dad.
How and why did you get into your space? It'd be really awesome if you could share a little bit about what you've also built within the Google ecosystem.
So I think how and why I got into the space was really the seed of what I was just telling you about trying to buy this index fund for the first time, that this seems to be harder than it needs to be. And really, I want to simplify this. My mantra, you'll hear me all the time saying there's no such thing as dumb questions. And I firmly believe that. And if anyone else is uncomfortable, I'll be up there with my hand asking all the questions for my own benefit, but also for everyone else. And what that looked like at Google, so it's such a great place, and they are really supportive of grassroots employee resource groups type clubs. And so about 2 years ago, I co-founded something called Wealth Made Women with Steffi Desaraga, who's my co-lead at Google. And the whole point was to have jargon-free, psychologically safe, real talk sessions on different personal finance topics, from everything to budgeting to your 401k to the mega backdoor Roth to real estate to all these different topics, and taking real care that we could have people participate in a variety of different ways. And what I mean by that is by chat or coming off mute or submitting a Dory in advance anonymously, and always stopping, because it's so easy. I mean, we do it all the time, that if we're really comfortable with something, we use acronyms and we use jargon and we don't even think about it. Me as a moderator, that's then my role to say, hey, can we just double click on that for a second? For someone who's new to this, how do you explain it in a simple way? And taking real care to always have that lens and that hat on during those sessions. And we've grown in 2 years to over 600 members across the country, which is so exciting.
So, what role do you play in the wealth space, and why is it important?
I think that I'm a community builder. And so I definitely, that's something that I like from the Wealth Made Women. And now I also volunteer outside of work with a community of women focused on real estate investing specifically. I think I'm not the most knowledgeable person in the room, but in a way that's my superpower, because I can make things accessible, and I'm living proof that you don't need to know everything to get started, which is, I know that we're going to talk about advice and tips, but that's one of my biggest things, is that you don't need to know everything to get started in so many different areas, but especially with personal finance, taking that first step and letting compound interest work for you and just taking action is so important. So I think I'm, in terms of my role, I see myself not in any formal capacity, but community builder, someone who will sit with you, hands on keyboard, like an impetus, like just get you started in one way or another.
I love it. And what do you think is the most exciting thing that you've learned that you would want others to know, especially as you've really personally dove into the real estate topic? I know you're doing some really exciting things there.
I would go back to what I just said, which was, you don't need to know everything to get started. And what I mean by that is, one, with expertise, because there's so much stuff online, YouTube, Google search, you name it, but also these online communities where you don't have to make all the mistakes that people did who just were on their own. So I think that's incredibly exciting. And also, even just things like, I think people talk about, what's your number, what's your target retirement number, or what are your monthly savings and investing goal numbers. Honestly, if you don't know, make it up, get started, and then iterate as you go. So I really do feel like action, what is the word? Measured and thoughtful action, but action is the most important thing.
So, is there a person or a company that's really inspiring you right now in the space, and why?
I'm inspired every day by the women in the real estate investor community, and and we have all kinds of free resources as well. But what I love about it is, you have these women, they'll have full-time jobs, they'll have young children, they'll have every single, aging parents that they have to take care of, every single barrier and obstacle and thing you can imagine, and they get it done and they figure it out. And even if they don't know everything, then they are willing to help others, and they ask for help, and it's just really a special thing to see. Going back to, you don't need to know everything to get started, leveraging other women, leveraging other communities and networks, and even if you find local meetup groups, or you can find this in so many different places, we all have you have to make time for the things that really matter, because it's so easy to let it just get taken up with other less urgent things.
It's very true. I love, there's some quote which is like, what you appreciate appreciates, right? So if you spend the time on, and appreciate. So what advice would you give to somebody getting started, especially in real estate? Because I think you've been taking a real learner's mindset there, and it's been really a pleasure to watch.
I think, thank you. First of all, what I would say is that you need to be able to sleep at night. And so for me, it's like, yes, I bought my first investment property this past year, but I also had needed, for me to feel comfortable and for me to be able to sleep at night, wanted to have an emergency fund in place. So it's like, it's not always the sexy thing that you get started with. And so having that emergency fund, it gives me choices. It gives me choices. It gives me comfort. It means if I'm in a toxic job, I'm able to leave. If me or a family member have an unexpected medical cost, I can cover that. Like, that to me, it's just very important. And along with that is, automation is your best friend in so many different ways. But in particular, with saving and investing goals, set it, forget it, start small, start with something that's manageable so you can sleep at night. And you'll be amazed at how quickly that nest egg becomes pretty sizable, and then that opens up even more options for you. Can you start looking at other things now? How do you want to diversify? What are other opportunities? Now that you have that thing done, it really lets you be able to explore other avenues.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want us to know, or how do we follow what you're doing? How do we keep in touch with you?
Well, I want to say, like, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff 3 years ago. And So anyone can learn at any point, at any time. And even if it feels like you're too late or you're behind or any of those things, you're not. We're not taught this in school. There's a lot of socioeconomic, all these different kinds of factors that come into play. Give yourself some grace, but also get started. So I would think that's, if I could leave everyone with one thing. In terms of how to stay in touch with me, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and we'll be sure to share all of those links and usernames, etc., in the post.
Perfect. Well, we'll be following along. And as always, so great to chat and so great to know you.
Well, right back at you, my friend.